Welcome to the Arrowheads podcast, your official podcast of the PLL sanctioned supporter group, the Arrowheads, your one-stop shop for Utah Archers lacrosse. All right, welcome to another episode of the Arrowhead podcast. This is your official podcast for the official supporter group of the Archers Lacrosse Club. We're so excited for this episode. We have with us none other than the man, Brett Dobson. Brett, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate you guys having me on. Really excited to be here.
All right, Brett. For those people that might be new Archers fans or new to the PLL, give us the intro. Who is Brett Dobson?
I'm a Canadian goalie. I graduated from St. Bonaventure University. It's gonna be hard to believe it's my third year now in the league. Gonna be my second one starting for the Archers. Number 45. Um, that's pretty much it right there to start. It's kind of a blank kind of answer, but yeah, that's basically it.
I love it. I love the Canadians, part of the Commonwealth, so I feel a connection there. So,
Oh yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. We got a lot of them on the roster.
yeah, I love it. So talk to us. You're a goalie. My sixth grader is a goalie. He's an absolute psycho. We went out and we were doing some airsoft wars with some local kids in our neighborhood, and he's getting mad that he got hit in the leg with an airsoft bullet, and I'm like, he's gonna go get hit with a bunch of lacrosse balls tomorrow and not be phased in the slightest. So talk to us about the mindset of a goalie. Like goalies are all crazy. Like tell us how you get to be a goalie.
Yeah, so first of all, your mind says a goalie. Yeah, you're gonna hit with the ball sometimes, but you gotta be okay with it because I feel like it's a part of your job. And my mindset's like I hate running. I'd rather get, hit with the ball than have to start moving my feet a bit more and start running. So that's kind of my mindset. And a lot of people I know, like, there's like a different era to it. And I think a lot of people that don't necessarily play goalie look at it differently. But to me, it's like, hey, you get slashed from a pole at times, right? You get cross-checked. Like that can hurt sometimes too, right? As a goalie, there's certain spots you get hit where it doesn't necessarily hurt as much, and there's certain spots that do. So I view it as that. You just don't have to necessarily move your feet. But going back to kind of how I started being a goalie, though, I was a player growing up. My dad was my coach on my team. And I was a hockey goalie because in Canada we all play hockey. And our goalie got sick or had heat stroke, and I was like, my dad's like, you're going to net. I was like, all right, awesome, perfect, whatever it takes. So that was my one game. I had fun. I was decent at it, and then as we went down the road, I ended up getting diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I decided to pop a net there just because I felt like it was easier to manage. And once I did that, I kind of loved it and, never looked back since. And I started off playing box goalie. And my first time playing in field. And if you guys don't know box lacrosse, you get these big, bulky pads and net. You kind of look like one of those guys in the old school Kanye West music videos. I can't remember what song he had with like the massive pads on it, but my first year playing field lacrosse, I had all those pads on because my parents didn't want me to get hurt for hockey tryouts. So that's how I started. And then as the years kind of went on, I started to take more and more padding off. And looking back at it now, maybe I shouldn't have.
That's awesome. So talk us through. You said this is 3 years in the league. Talk us through that process of joining the Archers, joining the PLL, what it took, through college to get there.
Yeah, so I'll go all the way back with it. I was, going into college, I almost never made it into college. I felt like I was, under recruited a lot. I felt like I had visited a couple of schools, but never really got any offers. And I was kind of set on playing for Randy Mearns, who at the time was at Canisius University. And then all of a sudden he switched over to St. Bonaventure University. And I ended up going, there to be his first commit, first recruit, first person on campus. So I felt like being able to build that program was awesome. And all I really needed for myself was an opportunity to play. And I felt like once I got out there, I started to get better. Being in college, if you get 4 years in net and see a lot of shots, and we were bad our first couple of years. We were like 0 and 22 or something like that, or 0 and 23.
Ouch.
We got to win. Yeah, it was tough. It was a tough. We got a lot of beating. But I remember seeing a lot of rubber and getting used to getting peppered with shots. And as we kind of went on, obviously COVID was in the middle there. We ended up having a good year my last year. And I was planning originally on fifth year. 'Cause, a lot of guys at that time from a smaller school and a smaller program hadn't necessarily been drafted into the PLL at the time. And I felt like I was going to have to go to a different school in order to do that midway through the year. Coach Mearns pulls me in his office and asks me, he's like, hey, what's your plan for next year? I said, well, my plan is to play in the PLL. If I can get drafted, I would love that. I don't know if that's going to happen because look, I got GMs calling me and asking me what your plan is. And he's like, you gotta let me know what your decision is. So I eventually told him, I said, if they draft me, I'll be there for camp. That's my end goal. That's what I want to be. Um, and as the season ended up, I ended up announcing it early that I was going in the draft and foregoing my fifth year because of COVID. Um, and I remember draft day it was kind of nerve-wracking because I didn't know anything about where I was gonna go. Like, I would expect to like 'cause looking back at my journey in the NLL too now, like I got a couple calls from GMs, like, figure they want to ask questions and stuff like that. But I guess they do all their homework and their due diligence through your coaches who basically kind of like represent you in a sense, almost like an agent in a way. Um, and come draft day, I didn't hear anything, and I got told from one of my coaches that I was going to get taken as high as possible. So in my draft, we took Matt Moore in the first round, and then I was drafted in the second round, which was awesome. I knew that at the time the Archers was something where I felt like I fit in really well. There's a lot of Canadian guys there. I knew Graham Hossick really well. He taught my sister in high school. Latrell Harris, being a Canadian guy, Trey Leclerc and a bunch of other guys that I'm missing right now. But I felt like once I got there, was like the younger brother to everybody because I was the youngest in the league at the time, going early from school. And then being there and getting welcomed with open arms was like, hey, get net, let's see some rubber. So I was like, all right, awesome, I love it. This is Tom Schreiber shooting on me. This is the best thing in the world. This is great. I'm gonna shoot on me. This is awesome, right? Oh my God, that's Scott Ratliff playing beside me, right? So add all those things together and it was like, damn, that's pretty cool. And I felt like it was kind of eye-opening, but at the same time, my first year I was playing had Adam Gittleman, and I felt like I learned a lot from him outside of just being a goalie and how to approach the game. And I felt like that year of, obviously you want to play, but that year of sitting behind somebody and learning can sometimes be better. Like, for example, I think, isn't it Jordan Love on the Packers who had to sit beside Aaron Rodgers for a bunch of years and then be able to figure it out? Like, I felt like that could be kind of a similar scenario. All of a sudden gets goes to, the Cannons and, I kind of got to step up and play. And that, the second year I felt like went really well. I don't think it can go any better than how it ended for us. And then now going into year three, I think the expectations to, continue that success and to continue to build on how your season went the year before and just stay healthy and to ultimately, bring a championship to Utah now.
You mentioned potentially doing like a fifth year at St. Bonaventure and then kind of deciding that you wanted to go and get drafted. Was there like a moment there that you kind of knew? Because when we were kids, like there were a lot of college players that were really into the MLL at the time. And so when did that kind of come on your radar as, hey, I think I could go and play professionally and that's something that I want to do compared to just graduating and finding a career in something else?
Yeah, so I remember, and this goes way back to when I was younger. My coach, his name was Sean Williams. His son Dyson plays at Duke currently right now. Him and I were both the same age growing up, so I had a lot of access to pro lacrosse, whether it be the NLL or senior A lacrosse in Canada or even MLL because the Toronto Nationals at the time were still here. So I remember being a ball boy, going to pick up balls out there, throwing the ball around with Brett Queener, who I thought back at the time was awesome, just seeing him buzz around the field. And Scotty Rogers was the other goalie there too. And I remember one time just throwing the ball with him, and I remember that it was an awesome thing for me to have as a kid. And I remember seeing that. It's like that's kind of something that made me want to be a professional lacrosse player. So as I go down the recruiting journey now, and I'm talking with Coach Mearns, I remember him talking about what do you want to do in life? I said, well, I want to play for Team Canada. I want to be able to, go into the NLL because for a lot of Canadian guys, playing box lacrosse is what you're prone to doing. The field season in Canada is only like 6 or 7 weeks long. So you do that, then you play the rest of the summer, you play box. So I originally thought, hey, box lacrosse is going to be an opportunity if I stick with it. And then, obviously I want to play pro field too. I want to do it all as a goalie, right? I think there's something special. I look at a guy who I idolize a lot in Dylan Ward. And for me, seeing how, he's widely renowned as one of the best box lacrosse goalies and field lacrosse goalies, right? And being able to see what he does, is something that I want to do, and that's kind of what I want to grab onto. So as that stuff was coming along, and I know in pro lacrosse, especially right now, there's only 8 teams, so there's 16 goalie spots open. It just so happened that my senior year, there was 3 or 4 goalies that retired. And I felt like, well, looking at the numbers, like if you get a spot as a young guy, it's hard to replace somebody, right? And if you get an opportunity to go in there, that would be the best bet. And one thing I owe kudos to Coach Mearns too, as I was going through that, St. Bonaventure wasn't always necessarily the plan for a fifth year. I looked at a couple other schools, a couple ACC schools, a couple Big East schools, but for me, ultimately, I was supposed to be a phys ed teacher. I didn't graduate my phys ed degree. I ended up graduating with a sports studies degree in personal and team coaching. But I knew that I was going to be a lacrosse full-time guy. Like working a job, a regular job wasn't in the cards for me. I tried it a couple summers before that and just didn't go well. So now kind of looking at it now, it's like, okay, you're full-time lacrosse, so you got to find a way to get through it, and go there. So anytime there's an opportunity to do it, and he's telling me as kind of like an agent in a sense, like, hey, people want to draft you, then I figured like, hey, well, that's your goal, right? Why not take it?
Dude, that's awesome. One thing I like that you pointed out is seeing a lot of rubber in college. And like I know in the NFL draft for quarterbacks, especially like those specialty positions, one of the biggest things they look at is like how many downs this guy actually play. Is he just good for 1 year or was he a starter consistently over several years? And especially if you're playing for maybe a team that was struggling those first 2 years, like you mentioned, you're going to see a lot of rubber and that's going to be honing your skills a lot. So I think that definitely is preparing you for what was ahead. And I love that you referenced Dylan Ward because that was going to be one of my other questions too, because I know that you're Canadian, that you play in the NLL, and that you're on the Canadian national team. I'd love if you could describe some of your NLL experience as well as your Canadian national team and how that's been going and what the plans are as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, so as we kind of go through it now, talk about the rubber stuff. The reason I referenced that too, I was reading an article, I think today, that Dana Resha put out there talking about, a couple guys who are in the draft right now, and Will Mark and Liam Mentiman. And like I was looking at like I remember when Will Mark played at LIU, like he got absolutely peppered. Like he had one game where he had 33 saves. I remember my first ever game in college was we played High Point. This was the year that they went to the or they might have gone to the tournament. I can't remember, but they beat Duke, they beat Virginia. We got absolutely peppered my freshman year of college. I think it was like we lost 13-0. It was brutal, but I think there was like 36 shots on net or something ridiculous like that. But going into that, and that's why I kind of talk about that because it pans out. Like when you see shots when there's no defenders there, imagine putting some all-world defenders in front of you like Graham Hossick. It makes your job that much easier, right? So but going into it, talk about the NLL season. I just finished my second year now. And I feel like it's been a learning curve, but one thing that I've taken from it that has helped in the PLL now is, a lot of people like you, it's my third season and going into my third year with the PLL. It really feels like my fifth because you've played, two indoor seasons. So you understand the task that it takes to be able to be a starting goalie in a league. And I think for myself, like it was eye-opening at the beginning, but once I learned, I was like, okay, now I'm comfortable. I'm able to get a feel for how the game goes. I felt both the indoor and the outdoor game, it's very different, but there's a lot of similarities in how you can approach it. And I felt like, being on the Georgia Swarm, we had a lot of great guys there. And I love, being there. Unfortunately, we lost to the Bandits the other night, but in overtime, which still chokes me because I felt like, we had a really good team that could have gone and did a run. Anytime you got a team with Lyle Thompson on it, you're gonna have a good chance. But I think as my second year in the league, like I'm planning on trying to play for 20 years, and there's 18 more if I play for that long, right? So I want to, you take it with a grain of salt, but there's a lot of lacrosse in front of you. And the indoor game is similar now with the shot clock, right? The 32 that's changed in the PLL now off a face off to the 52 if you get a full possession after that. So the pace of play is similar to how the box game is. So conditioning wise and approaching it's going to help. But going even to the national team side, like some of those practices, man, are crazy. Like you got guys like Jeff Teed on there, you got Graham Hossick on defense, you got Dylan Ward there. You got Westberg, you got Dane Smith and Josh Byrne. All those guys shooting on you. It's kind of like, wow. Like I remember looking back to before I even made the team, last summer. I was in high school the last time there was a world event, and I ended up playing against them, and I was just like kind of starstruck, like seeing these guys shoot on me. It's like wow, like that's Curtis Dixon or Jeff Teet's still in college, but damn, like that's Jeff Teet, or you look down there and that's Brody Merrill, right? So you see stuff like that, and I think that when you have that experience, it helps you get better. And I think, going to San Diego and being a part of that team is pretty cool. Although we didn't win, it kind of sucked that we lost to the United States in the finals, but um, getting that experience to represent your country, there's nothing greater than that. And I think that you see that a lot. Like I remember watching Full Swing the season two, and they had the Ryder Cup. It's the truth. There's nothing better than playing for your country. There's nothing you want to do more than, represent your country the right way. And with lacrosse going into the Olympics soon, hopefully that I'll be able to have an opportunity to play on the Olympic team. And, obviously go to the Olympics would be something really cool. So yeah, playing for the national teams was awesome. And I think that it's a great group of guys, and to be, one of the best in Canada and your position, I think is a pretty cool thing to have. And I think being underneath Dylan Ward was awesome. Whenever you look up to a guy and you get to be on the same team of him, you're kind of starstruck. But when at the same time you're on this doing the same role, you want to learn and help him out as well. And him and I have an awesome relationship. I text him every week or so roughly about something. So him and I have a good relationship. And I always joke and tell the story about how I got my first credit card in the States. He showed me how to do it because he was in a similar position when he got drafted to Colorado. He eventually got his green card. That's something I'm working on right now too. He's like, hey, you got to get this, and you can go get these credit cards. So it was nice of him to do that for me and help me out.
That's
That-
awesome.
That's awesome. I have one more question before I give it a break, but beforehand, I think one thing that comes off pretty quickly with your personality is that you're a huge fan of the game, as well as being a professional of the game, which is really cool to see. And Paul Rabel references this in the documentary, but he talks about how like for a long time, like professional lacrosse wasn't like cool, and like for some reason people didn't want to follow it. But it is cool, and it's fun to watch people be a fan of it. And so I think that's awesome. I love the attitude that you have. I texted a couple because we all coach and we know the lacrosse community, and we're trying to get this out to more of the youth in the state of Utah. And so I texted a couple of the youth that I know that are goalies, and I kind of asked them, like, hey, what would you ask Brett Dobson if you had the chance? Because I wanted to reach out to those biggest fans. And one of them texted me, they said, like, I just want to know what they're doing every day to get better. And so could you dive into kind of what your routine looks like? Obviously, you're seeing a lot of rubber throughout the whole year because the NLL and then what Team Canada is doing and all those kind of things. But realistically, as a professional, you're the one that's in charge of your regimen, I imagine. And how does that go? What does that look like?
Yeah, so deep diving, kind of going back to it, I think for myself, I've always been kind of a lax rat in a sense. Like I've always loved the game. I've always been about what sticks do guys have, what are they using, what mesh are they using. I think those little details, if you see that in a kid at a young age, I think is one, you could be like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? Or two, it's like the attention to detail to what this guy's doing is going to be something that paves the way in the future. And I think for my position, like I do a lot of work on studying shooters and looking at what they're doing. And I felt like that's just a different way to analyze it and add everything in there. But in terms of my regimen, it's changed over the years. I used to be very, very strict on I need to take shots every day. I need to get a lot of shots. I need to get guys to shoot the ball as hard as we can. But I think towards my senior year, I still ended up taking a lot of shots and a lot of shots in volume. I had a coach, bless his heart, Nico Capron at St. Bonaventure, who would shoot on me every day. He would probably shoot like anywhere from 300 to 500 shots of warm up on me before practice or after practice on top of that. Like this guy was getting stim before practice to just to shoot on me. That's how many shots he was taking. But I used to go through a lot of that stuff and it's changed. Like every day I felt like you got a chance to get better. And that's why a lot of these college kids are really good coming out of the draft. Like they have their sticks in their hands every day. Now, playing in the NLL, it's a little different now. My life, I'm a high school lacrosse coach. I do a lot of goalie lessons, work with goalies down in Atlanta, and then I work, obviously as with the Georgia Swarm and the Utah Archers. So what I'll do is usually once a week I'll take shots. I think that, between the way the pro lacrosse works, you have a practice the day before the game. Sometimes you'll have a shoot around, then you have the game at night, right? So that's three chances of putting your pads on, suiting up right then and there. So I'll throw a fourth one in there that week, and I'm a firm believer that like now that I'm at the point where again you've repped it out, what's this, a 10 or 10,000 hour rule or whatever, 100,000 hour rule where you rep it out. Like I feel like you know what you're kind of doing. It's like riding a bike. So I'll just get it once a day to feel comfortable, or once a week to feel comfortable about what I'm doing, and then focus on again making sure my stick's throwing right because that's just easy stuff. And as a goalie, right, like your lifespan in a league, if you get hit in the thumb, you break your thumb, you're in a splint. Like it's hard to play. So you want to make sure that your body's your paycheck in a sense. You limit the opportunity of you getting hurt, but at the same time, you still find a way to get better. And a lot of it's mental reps too. Film. Like I sit down and watch a lot of film during the week. I study these shooters of tendencies and stuff like that. And I think that it helps. I feel like that's like the answer to the quiz or the test when you get in there. So that's kind of a lot of it. And then in the summertime, it's a little bit more different for me. I feel like I go do a lot of camps for the PLL. So you don't necessarily are working out as much as you want to, but you're on your feet a lot. You want to try and work out in the indoor season. I was doing some weights at the start and I ended up switching over to doing more of a Peloton workout just to get your kind of legs and your cardio. And with all those pads, you sweat a lot, but I feel like I sweat way more doing those Peloton workouts. So after I'm done those, I feel better about myself. And I'm like, okay, like, we got our legs going. So yeah, shots once a week, lots of film, dialing my stick in. And then even now, like if I don't have a shooter that I, trust, I'll even have my girlfriend, she played lacrosse. just kind of throw a couple shots at me just so I can get the footwork and the fundamentals down. Like today, she did a little bit of stuff in the backyard just because I took my week off after the NLL season, and now I'm kind of ramping it up heading into training camp.
That's awesome. Yeah, talking about goalies sweating, my sixth grader played a sixes tournament,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we had to drive the 40-minute drive home with the windows down because he smelled so bad after 3 hours of sixes goalie.
Oh, I bet. I can only imagine. I mean, like I know the equipment smells bad too, so that doesn't help either. And it just sits there, it just smells terrible in the heat.
It's great. We love it. Things you do as parents.
Exactly.
So give us the, second year with the Archers last year, and you guys go on a championship run. Talk us through that season, the championship game, what that was like. I mean, we know you guys had a close one with the Water Dogs here in Utah, came down to the wire, rematch in the final. Talk us through all of that.
Yeah, so it was an awesome year. I think overall looking back, and I know you guys had Will on your podcast originally, but it was in that off season, it was interesting because Will didn't re-sign with us, Marcus didn't re-sign with us, Ratliff had retired. We might have lost another guy, I can't remember if I'm mistaken, but those were the three big names that we had lost, right? And I felt like there was a lot of holes, like who's gonna fill in what. And we looked around the room and we got Warren Jeffrey back who had missed the entire year because he had a broken wrist. We had gotten Mike Sisselberger in the draft, and I felt like coming in the year, it's like, damn, like Sis is really good at faceoffs. Like we could get the ball a lot. And if you want to get guys like Tom Schreiber, Connor Fields, we signed Mac O'Keefe in the offseason. Grantham had the ball. Like the more those guys have the ball, the better we'll probably be, right? So we had those guys. And then down low, we kind of changed our identity a bit. You looked around, we were really young at the D mid core. That offseason, Dominique Alexander was the other one that retired, and we ended up releasing Mark McNeil. We brought two young bucks in who at the start of camp, I was like, really? We're getting rid of these guys? And then as the year went on, I was like, I could see why. Piper Bond and Connor Marr were lights out the entire year. I know Latrell was the short stick defensive player of the year, and it was rightfully so earned because no one wants to dodge on him, and he's a very good athlete. But we have all these young, youthful kind of life coming into the locker room. And it's like, damn, like we got a lot of Canadians, we got a lot of young bucks, and we can kind of, change the culture and focus on that. Like I know one thing about the Archers, and you guys could probably attest to that, being our fan base is, we're not flashy with what we do. We're kind of there. I know Sis is a little out there, and I love Sis for that because he's a big personality, and we all love Sis. And anytime I see him, he puts a smile on my face. But we're pretty bland in a sense, right? And I think, going in the year, it was simple, but it worked, right? We got a big win against the Cannons in week one. I want to say week two, we played the Chrome and we beat them pretty handily. I want to say week three or week four. Can't remember who we played after that, but at some point we played the Chaos before the World Games break. And that was a game we had lost. And I know for us, like, yeah, we lost and a loss sucks, but I was looking around and, obviously looking at the culture, the Chaos in our culture. Defensively, all our guys were on Team Canada. Offensively, all their guys were basically on Team Canada. I felt like it was like, hey, nobody get hurt. We're about to go play these guys. Let's make sure nobody hurts anybody. And I don't know if that was a factor into it. I mean, they beat us pretty handily and we didn't play our best game, but come back from the World Games, like it was a different mantra. Like more guys were a little tired from it, but we also, got to play through it. We had the All-Star break, kind of started rolling, and then we'd clinched our playoff spot early. I can't remember when it was. And then we ended up playing the Water Dogs, and it was like, hey, we've already clinched. Like, what do we want to do here? Do we want to play guys just to rest guys? Do we want to give some guys a break? So I remember talking to Coach Bates, and he had asked me, he's like, hey, what do you think about this game? Do you want to play? Do you want to not play? I was like, yeah, I want to play. Like, play for half. Like, we have next week off. Not sure what game speed it would look like. And then we have the first round of the playoffs, then so on, right? So we were off the first week as well. So we kind of had a 2 week break, actually, I believe, if it was not mistaken. And um, we were able to get a team practice, and so that helped. But we lost that nail biter, and everyone was kind of like, damn, we lost. But losing at that time could kind of be a good thing, right? You can go on a run, you reset, you have a bad taste in your mouth, you win the semifinals, you go to the finals, and then lo and behold, we play those guys again, right? One thing that sticks out to me a lot about last season was we were flying high in the semis, and then all of a sudden Garrett Epple hit Connor Fields and he hurt his shoulder. And that was like kind of like a big blow for us because Fields, he's a awesome guy, he's a huge part of the team, huge part of the offense. And one thing with offensive guys, I'm sure you guys can understand this, is there's chemistry. There's a lot of chemistry that can be had to be on an offense to be successful. So for us to lose Fieldsy, have him go down, game before that, Latrell tore his ACL but played the whole game. you lose guys like that throughout the year. And, Connor or John Robbins as well was somebody who hurt his knee midway through the year that we didn't see again for the rest of the year, right? Because he did something to his PCL. But you have guys like that go down, and it's like, oh, let's win it for these guys. Let's keep playing. We're motivated, right? So we get to Philly. We first practice there. Fieldsy's up in the air if he's going to play. And he went practice, full padded practice. Felt good. Woke up the next morning and was like, I can't go. And he was very upset because nobody wants to ever sit out of a championship game if you can have an impact on it. Reed Bowering steps up huge for us. One game, comes in, scores a goal. I'm getting chills just thinking about it right now, too. Guy hadn't played a second of lacrosse all summer. Game like was at training camp with us, hadn't been with us since then. Shows up, wins the championship, and then he's off to Paris with his girlfriend. So it was pretty cool to see that. But to get in the championship game, you're in Philly. You do a team dinner, team locker room was awesome. The vibe was great. And you go to a championship. It's a one game takes all. Anything can happen, right? I remember getting there and it was kind of raining. And I was hoping the rain would hold off a bit. Because as a goalie, like I wear full baggy cotton sweats, right? And I've had issues in college where I've done that and it's pissed rain and I feel like I'm 20 pounds heavier. And that is a factor into the game. So we get out there, we get off to a good start. I think we're up big at halftime, like almost like 8-3 or 8-2 or something like that. If I remember correctly, I don't know. My memory's starting to get a little jogged on it now. And then they start coming back and they start having a big comeback. They have a goal from Caraway right before halftime or after halftime. We're kind of playing down a guy now because Cam Wires tore his hamstring, I think right before halftime. So our LSMs are we had one LSM going every rep. We had Challen Rogers playing D-Mitty who picked up a pole for a shift. We had Connor Marr who picked up a pole and the man down. Like it almost looked like club lacrosse when a guy gets hurt or a guy gets a penalty, you give the pole off to somebody else and he goes out there and plays. It was kind of funny to see that, but we kind of held on for a bit. I think at one point they had tied it up. And as they had tied it up, I remember Graham Hossick had one of the biggest hits I've ever seen in my life live. I thought it was originally earlier in the year when we played the Water Dogs in Dallas. He hit Eli Gobrecht. And it was such a loud hit that like everybody like looked around like waiting for a flag to be thrown on the one in Dallas, and there was no flag thrown. So come this hit, the flag gets thrown on this one, but the momentum switched. And it just kind of gave us life because if you look at the play, Graham runs over, I want to say it was Ben Randall in the open field, runs him over. And that ball is now picked up. We get a flag, whatever. They're reviewing it. Right after that first power play, I think they bobble a pass or it gets picked off. We go down, score in transition. Then Dylan Ward gets hurt, hurts his hamstring. They put Matt DeLuca in net. It's like, okay, like maybe this is his thing. Comes out, makes two massive saves that, gives them life. They go down and score on a power play. Then all of a sudden we're back down there. We're kind of willing our way through, and Tom scores one at the end of the shot clock. And, there might have been some time stuff that there's been talk about where the shot clock didn't reset properly. I'll die on the hill that, if the shot clock was at 1 beforehand, Tom would have shot it and tried and found a way to score because that's just what Tom Schreiber does. But I think for him, though, him scoring that goal was a huge sigh of relief. They come back down, they shoot one, miss the net. They went a little early on that one. Connor Marr dive out, gets the ball back for us. And it was a little bit of a controversial play, but if you go back and watch the clip, it was the right call. He wasn't out of bounds before his hand went through there, gets the ball back. We go down, we call a timeout. We run the shot clock all the way down to 0. They get the ball back, they call timeout. Awesome play call drawn up by them, by the way, too. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting them to just throw it towards the net, and there's a rule in the PLL if you take a penalty, time goes back on the clock. So that's when my head, I'm processing that happening. Like, okay, like they're probably gonna huck it. Nobody take a penalty. It's 10, they'll put more time on the clock. They'll have a power play. I think they were like 4 for 5 on the power play at that point or something like that. And we weren't doing very well. But then again, play happens. We have defensive personnel down there. They kind of move the ball forward off of like a seal, like a 1-4 pop kind of seal for what's his name coming around the outside. McCardle gets the ball, and we kind of just double him in the open field with Jared Connors. And all of a sudden, Caraway comes down Main Street full stream with the ball, kind of open look. And earlier in the game, he had hit a 2-pointer right at halftime. He hit one earlier in like the first or third quarter on me, and I was like, okay, like this could be bad if I give up a third one here. And I remember seeing, all I remember is, time kind of slowed down and he's about to shoot. And I see the corner of my eye, and it's tough as a goalie when there's a screen, let alone a guy's fully diving, like kind of like Secret Service to try and block the ball. We got Piper Bond and Connor Marr diving, and I see just enough of his stick to the point where I know he can't pull it low to high. So he had to leave it on the ground. And I was able to just get a piece of it. I've been on the record for saying it too. If it was on turf, it probably would have gone in because those skip shots I've struggled with in the past. And it was the perfect shot. I just got a piece of it and just enough to, shoot it all the way up and out of the bounds. Then after that save kind of happened, knew there was some more time on the clock to try and get a stick on the ball. And you finally hear that whistle, and it's like, damn, like you're champs. You don't really know what to do. You start running. So I was looking for my teammates, and all the gloves and helmets were in the air. And it was just an awesome celebration as a group because battling with guys who got injured, winning a championship after all these years of being the number one team in the regular season, and then not being able to get over the hump and always losing to the chaos. I felt like it was a sigh of relief for a lot of guys that had been in that organization since day one. And then, being named finals MVP was an awesome feeling to have my family there. And, just kind of looking back to like all the times where you almost give up on the sport, not being recruited, and then to be, finals MVP was awesome to see, and winning a championship. There's nothing better, man. But they're like, I think I've watched a lot of that roast, the Tom Brady roast stuff, and the next ring's the best one that you want, right? But then that's the one you want to go with. It reminds me of that. So that's what this upcoming season is going to be about, is defending our title. And we know we got a target on our back. So we got to make sure that we do a good job of taking care of ourselves and, focusing on doing the little things right.
Brett, I don't know if you felt this way, but all of us watching from home, we knew you were the MVP as soon as we saw that ball get deflected. That little piece that you got, that was the biggest sigh of relief for every Archers fan, I swear. So,
I know, man. I joked with my mom afterwards too, because as a goalie parent, it can be stressful at times. Like I know my mom's had her fair share of stressful ones, and like that one might be the most stressful one that we've won. Like there's been a lot where like we've lost in overtime before in the past, but yeah, that was a big sigh of relief for myself and my family too.
yeah, so what did it feel like to be named MVP? Was that like poison or was that like motivation?
I would say it's neither. It's like at that time, like I know for my head, like after looking back at, I got a full year until we play again, right? So like I could be poisoned down the line, but in the moment, it was awesome to kind of feel that and get the boys to celebrate around you. Personally, I thought Tom Schreiber maybe deserved it. I felt like the way he played and the way he carried the team all the way through the year and putting the team on his back offensively was great. But to win it was really cool, and I felt like it was awesome as an alumni from St. Bonaventure right now, because that MVP trophy is actually sitting in my coach's office, and it's a recruiting tool that he uses to help build a program. We didn't have the bestest of years this year, unfortunately, but it's sitting there to help grow that program and, show kids that like, hey, like this could be you one day as well if you put the work in, you're willing to, do the work when nobody's watching.
Oh, that's well put. Thank you for answering that. And that is a motivation to all of us. And actually, time's kind of winding down, but we really wanted to get your take on what Utah is like. Maybe not just lacrosse Utah is like, but just Utah itself. So how much time you spent here and what do you think about the Archers coming to Utah?
I've spent, I think I've been there two or three times now, and two of them have been for games there, and I think one of them might have actually been for a camp. I can't remember. I do a lot of camps in the summertime, but first thing that comes off the top of your head, it's beautiful, right? Like that field we get to see the mountains in the background is really, really cool. I think it's awesome they got an NHL team now. I'd love to know what the name of the Utah NHL team is going to be, but that kind of welcoming that they got there, I'm hoping the Archers get the same way. And I think eventually, like, what's the guy's name that owns the team again? That owns all the sports teams
Ryan
and
Smith.
yeah,
Yeah.
if Ryan Smith eventually ends up owning the Archers, I think it'd be something really cool as to see. And I felt like my rookie year when we went there, they loved us, and I think that was a big reason was because of Will and Gitz and Marcus having a huge role in building the lacrosse community up there, which they've done an awesome job of. Um, and I think taking it away from lacrosse too, I think that there's beautiful places to go ski and do all these other things, but I don't know a lot about Mormon culture. It's a little different, I feel like, and I know that's an ongoing stereotype when you go out there. But I do think it's an awesome place for us to be, and I think that sometimes those hole in the wall places like that, and shouldn't say hole in the wall, but like a place where lacrosse isn't necessarily the biggest thing in the world, can do two things. One, it can, help ignite a city and get the fans behind it. Two, it can help grow the sport. I think that lacrosse is going to get big at some point. I think right now we're at the forefront of pushing it forward. I think that the city of Utah, sorry, the state of Utah and the city of Salt Lake is gonna, enjoy that a lot. I think it's gonna be huge. So I'm excited, and I know I haven't necessarily lived in Utah before, but my parents want to do a family trip and they had suggested Utah, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to go to Utah. Like, let's go to Utah for a family trip, and if the sport takes off, maybe some people will recognize us on the street.
Awesome. Which perfectly leads us into our next segment, which is what do you know about Utah? So we got a quick quiz for you on things of Utah. And by the way, instead of hole the wall, we like to refer to it as hidden gem of lacrosse.
Perfect, perfect. I like that. That's a better way to put it.
All right, you ready for this? We got 7 questions for you. We're gonna start off real easy. State capital city of Utah.
Is it not Salt Lake City?
Salt Lake is correct. Okay. Do you know the state bird of Utah?
Um, it's not an eagle, is it?
It's a seagull.
Seagull? Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
There's a story behind that we can get into another time. How many national parks are in Utah?
75? I don't know.
5.
5?
Yeah,
Okay. I was way off. I thought there was gonna be
close.
way more.
Well, I think we're like second behind like California, which is crazy.
I could see.
Um, are there any fish in the Great Salt Lake?
I feel like that's a trick question. I'm gonna say no.
No is correct. Um, so what is the saying that we have for snow in Utah? There's a saying here in Utah for our snow.
Um, can I get it in a sentence without saying the word?
Sure, it's actually it's like a phrase.
Oh, it's gonna be a chilly one, or is this a blizzard coming down today?
It's the greatest snow on earth.
Oh, okay. I like that. That's not bad at all.
All right, how many ski resorts can you name in Utah?
I don't know if the resorts, but the only one I could think of is Park City, Utah.
Park
Is that
City
one?
Works. Yeah, that's a resort.
Is there one in Salt Lake City?
There's a bunch just out of Salt Lake. So I think there's 4 within like a 15-minute drive of downtown Salt Lake. So you got Alta, Brighton, Snowbird, Solitude, Bryan Head, Canyons. What else am I missing? There's a whole bunch. Deer Valley. We got a
Oh,
lot.
I should have known Deer Valley because I live off the street. My street that I live on in Canada is Deer Valley. I think it was named. Is there another valley one that's out there?
Um,
Weren't the
oh,
Olympics held there at one point too?
yes, yes. And I can't think of it, but yes. Yeah, we got a whole bunch
Soldier
of them.
Hollow? You know Soldier Hollow?
Okay, last question. How many college lacrosse teams did Utah have between MCLA and NCAA combined?
Okay, so there's Utah, like the Utes. There's BYU. Those are the two most ones I've seen recently because they've been on the what's the word I'm looking for? They've been on the TLN. Those are the two biggest
Yep.
ones. I think, is there a third one? There's got to be more than three, right? Because I can't
Mhm.
think of any other schools that are in Utah. Does Utah State have one?
Yep.
So that's three. What other school would be from Utah? Is there any other schools that I'm missing that I can't think of right now? Is there a not a,
One of them just beat the number 2 team in the nationals for MCLA today.
just beat the number two team?
So they're the 14th seed.
They were the 14th seed.
Yeah.
Not Utah, not BYU. I can't think of any other schools out there. I'll take my three and go from there.
Okay.
Just say guesses.
So we've got Utah State.
Yeah.
Then we've got Westminster, which is NCAA. You've got Utah has 2. They've got NCAA and MCLA.
Well, I wasn't gonna count that one because I knew
Okay.
that, like, that's like saying St.
Okay.
Bonaventure has too. You know what I mean?
We count it. We got to count all we can get.
Okay.
Utah Valley University. Those are the guys that beat UVU. They beat the
Really?
number 2 seed today. BYU and then Utah Tech, which is down. Used to be Dixie State University down in St. George, Utah. So
I should have said a bunch of schools of Utah. That would have been great.
yeah. Just say Utah something, and you would have been good. So
Yeah, I should have done that next time. I'll do it next time. I got you.
well, that's it. So that's all the quiz we have. Would love to just kind of get your final thoughts, right? And then beyond, actually, before I forget, my 6th grader goalie has a question for you. He's like, Dad, you got to ask him this question. How do you handle low shots? How do you save those?
Um, I try to hinge at my hip and get my hands down to the ball. I try to be a little more patient with it. One thing I'll say is if the ball is, again, when you say low shots, there's low with no bounce, there's a skip shot, there's a high to low one with a bounce, and there's a high bouncer, right? I try to be as patient as possible in reading it. Sometimes it's a flaw, but sometimes it helps, especially on the high bouncers. But I think if I hinge at the hips and not just put my stick down and try to pick it up cleanly, I think it helps. Like I played baseball growing up, and I look at first basemen and how they, they don't stab at the ball if there's a bad throw come off the ground. They kind of, cover it up with the bounce. That's how I kind of try to play a net. And I think too, like if you combine that with viewing a shot as just like someone playing passively with just a bad pass every time, you're not necessarily going to flinch. You're going to be able to react to it. So hinging at the hips, getting low and athletic, and then just making sure you're soft with the hands and giving yourself time to react to it.
Awesome. Love it. Final question. Leave us with your final thoughts. What message do you have for those of us in Utah, those Archers fans? What's your final kind of parting message to all of us?
I got a couple here, so I apologize for keeping you guys here a while. But one, I'll start off with saying the Arrowhead for the Archers fan club is one of the coolest out of all of them. I think it's the best one there is, just because it reminds me a lot. I don't know is that not what they call where the Chiefs play in Kansas City?
Yep.
I think it's a cool thing to have for the lacrosse side. And I think that what you guys have done in terms of posting and growing the game from a fan's perspective for us is awesome. So I'll leave that with that. For the fans of Utah, you're getting a really, really good team with a lot of really good players. Tom Schreiber is obviously a 3-time MVP, might even be 4-time if I'm not mistaken. And he's widely renowned as one of the best players in the world now. So you're getting one of the best players in the world coming to your state. And I think that, having the success we've had in the past, it's something that, a lot of Utah sports fans as a whole, not just lacrosse fans, can get behind. And I think that, I know Utah sports fans are loud. I've seen the Jordan documentaries with the Jazz. I've seen the standing ovation the hockey team got when they came there. I'm hoping that for the Archers, once we get there, we receive the same type of um, treatment. And I think that'd be awesome to see for lacrosse. And lastly, um, for Utah lacrosse fans and lacrosse players, keep pushing the sport forward. You guys got some great coaches there that know what they're doing. And I think that as a lacrosse community, it's a hidden gem, not a hole in the wall. It's a hidden gem that people are starting to understand and see. And I think that it's one of those things that once you get out there and you're there, you're able to see the growth of the sport. But if you're on the East Coast, kind of where I am, I'm in Canada right now near Toronto, you don't necessarily see it until you go out there. So and keep pushing it forward. And collegiately, I know Drew McMinn's done a great job of building that program up and starting it up with Utah after Gitz and Marcus's dad took over there. So to see that team grow, I think is only going to help the growth of lacrosse grow out there as well.
Love it.
Okay. Brett, we've loved having you on, man. We would love to have you on again in the future, maybe in a season or two, and recap with you, hopefully after another championship. We'd love that. Thanks for coming on, man. And if you need anything, you always reach out to us. You can come out here and hang out if you ever need a place to stay when you come out here. So we appreciate you having you on.
Appreciate it.
We have a phone number for you guys, and you can send in your texts and your calls for the players and for us, and we'll play your voicemails. And so that's 385-202-6072. So go in and leave a voicemail for us. And just like the Archers motto, above all else, win. So that's great. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Catch you next time.
This podcast is not affiliated with the Premier Lacrosse League or Archers Lacrosse Club. This is an independent, fan-run podcast.